Welcome back. Let's commence our discussion on a brand new topic, and that will be domain and range of a function. Okay, we have not quite talked about this concept before, but we have talked about components that will help you understand this concept better. And for example, you need to know quadratic equation, which we have done before. Okay, so without further delay, let's get started. The first question states, which of the following value of x is not in the domain of the function? What it's literally asking you to do is to determine under what circumstances the denominator will become zero. In other words, the whole function becomes undefined. Okay, in other words, x should not be equal to a specific value, and if it is equal, then that value of x is not in the domain of the function, right? So here's how you do it. So y equals 2x minus 1 over x squared minus 6x plus 9, right? So we have a quadratic equation in the denominator. So x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. So if you multiply negative 3x times negative 3x, you get plus 9x squared. If you add negative 3x plus negative 3x, you get negative 6x, right? So if you substitute this in place of negative 6x, and you get x squared minus 3x plus 9 equals 0. So that means x times 3 minus 3x minus 3 equals 0, implies x minus 3 times x minus 3 equals 0, which implies x equals plus 3. So what it's really saying is, if x equals 3, the denominator becomes 0, which makes function y undefined, which means x cannot be equal to 3 if you want x to be a domain of the function. Because x equals 3, x is not in the domain of the function, so the correct answer is 3. In other words, it's answer choice D. What is the domain of the function f of x equals 2 over 7x minus 1? Again, denominator cannot be equal to 0. So if you equate 7x minus 1 equals 0, x equals 1 over 7, which means if x equals 1 over 7, x is not a domain in the function, but it's asking what is the domain of the function. That means x cannot be equal to 1 over 7, and that is the answer. It depends on whether the question is asking whether x is a domain of the function or x is not a domain of the function. If it is not a domain, then you say equal. If it is a domain, then you say not equal. So it depends on which sign you use and what's asked in the question. So let's go. What is the range of the function y equals x squared plus 2? So if you substitute a range of values, say x equals 0, x equals negative 1, x equals plus 1. So if x equals 0, y equals 2, x equals negative 1, y equals 3. If x equals plus 1, y equals 3. So for all negative and positive numbers, y would always be a positive function because of the x squared, because the term is squared. Whereas x is equals 0 is the only time y can be equal to 2. So irrespective of all values except 0, y is going to be greater than 2. In other words, y is greater than or equal to 2, because those are the only two possible extremes you can have. You can have 2 or values greater than 2. Okay? So the correct answer is D. What is the smallest value that belongs to the range of the function? So essentially what the question is asking you, please go ahead and substitute the answer choices provided for x and then see where do you get the smallest value for f of x. So let's go ahead and substitute x equals 2, which implies f of x equals 2 times 4 minus 2 minus 2. That will be 2 times 2 minus 2 is 2. So x equals negative 2 would be f of x equals 2 times 4 negative of negative 2 minus 2, which would be 2, 4 plus 2 minus 2, which is 2, 12 minus 2 is 10. If If -2 is giving you a positive number, -4 should give you even a higher positive number. So we can reject these two. We've already done 2. Let's do 0. So x equals 0 implies 2 times 4 minus 2 is 8 minus 2 is 6. So that's another positive number. Won't work. So let's do x equals 4. So that's 2. 4 minus 4 minus 2 is 0 minus 2 equals -2. So that's the smallest value we have so far for these range of x values. So the correct answer is 4. Okay. If f of x equals x minus 3, then what is f inverse of x? So we know f of x equals x minus 3. Let's assume f of x equals y, which means y equals x minus 3. Replace x with y and y with x into this expression. So what does that do? Y becomes x, x becomes y. So if you substitute, if you add +3 on both sides, implies y equals x plus 3. Replace y again with, so this is now, because we have switched, f of x becomes f of x equals f inverse of x. That means if y equals f of x, then y equals f inverse of x. So f inverse of x equals x plus 3. Does that make sense? Okay. If f of x equals x over x minus 3, again, what is f inverse of x? So f of x equals, I'm just going to draw a line here so I can start over here. So f of x equals x over x minus 3. So we substitute f of x equals y. So y equals x over x minus 3. So replace x with y and y with x. So x equals y over y minus 3. xy minus 3x equals y. So let's take out I guess you can take -3x equals y minus xy, right? So let's take y out, which is 1 minus x. So 3x, -3x equals y over 1 minus x. So we can do one thing. So y equals -3x over 1 minus x, or we can write it as 3x over x minus 1. Because there's a negative here, we can multiply negative throughout. So that means -x becomes plus x and 1 becomes -1. So this is, so f inverse of x equals 3x over x minus 1. Okay. Define f of x equals x squared minus fx minus 2, restricting the domain of the function to -∞, 0. Determine f inverse of x. How do we do it? Well, first the function f of x equals x squared minus 4x minus y. You can replace f of x equals y, which is equal to x squared minus 4x minus 4. Now this is a quadratic expression, which takes the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In other words, a equals 1, b equals -4, c equals -4. To solve for x using the vertex form, we need to do x equals minus b over 2a. Minus b means 4, okay, negative of -4 over 2 times 1 is 4 over, sorry, yeah, 4 over 2, which is 2. So x equals 2, right? So what's the vertex form, which is y equals vertex of a parabola, okay? This is vertex form of f of x for a parabola is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, okay? So we know this is h. This is the h form. We need to still find k. So if you substitute 2 into this expression, so ax squared plus bx plus c, you substitute value of x as 2, a is 1. So 1 times 2 squared plus -4 is b times 1, and then c is -4 as well. So that's 4 minus 4 minus 4, right? X is 1, a squared. So that will be -4, right? Or is it correct? X squared plus b, x is 2, 4. Oh, sorry, this would be 2. That's what I was wondering. So this is 8. So 4 minus 4 is -8. Okay. Knew that something was off. So y equals, so that means we know our k is -8 and h is 2. So h equals 2, k equals -8. So y equals, we know a is 1. So 1 times x minus h is 2 squared, h minus 2 squared, minus k, right? So y equals x minus 2 squared minus 8. Just add 8 on both sides. So y plus 8 equals x minus 2 squared. So if you take square root on both sides, y plus 8 is plus or minus, okay, equals x minus 2. And if you add plus 2 on both sides, I'm just going to do the rest of the problem here. X equals plus 2 plus or minus oh, actually we want it in y. So let's go back here. I did it. What I ended up doing was I did it in terms of x. We want it in terms of y. So we add, we get this form, right? So y plus 8 equals x minus 2 squared, right? If you take square root on both sides, right? Or if you take square root on both sides, that means y plus 8 equals, oh, I made another mistake. Okay, we need to swap to get the f inverse. We need to switch x to y, y to 8, right? So that means y plus 8 becomes x plus 8 equals y minus 2 squared. Apologize. I'm like, why am I not going anywhere with this problem? Okay, that's because of that. Now, if we take square on both sides, then we get x plus or minus root 8 equals y minus 2. If you add plus 2 on both sides, y equals 2 plus or minus square root of x plus 8, right? Because the original function is all non-positive number, right? It's all negative number, negative infinity to 0. Between that, it's all negative number, right? That means we had all negative, which means we want all positive, right? So y equals 2, right? If it was positive, we get all negative, right? So we need all positive numbers this time. So it's 2 negative x plus 8. This is the answer. Okay. Because for the initial function, because the interval was negative infinity to 0, f of x contained all negative numbers, right? Which means we had a positive of 2 plus square root of x plus 8. Because we're taking the inverse, we want all positive numbers this time. So which means we have to have a negative function. So whatever was positive is negative. Whatever was negative is positive. So y equals 2 minus square root of x plus 8. So this is the answer. Okay, clearly these are incorrect to start with. So it's either this or this. And I said, because we had all non-negative numbers, okay, because we had all negative numbers for the initial interval, which means 2 plus of whatever the numbers. So when you take the inverse, the sign changes. So plus becomes minus. Okay, so that's why we get this as the answer. And f of x equals x squared plus 9x minus 7, it's asking be restricted to f have an inverse. Which of these domain restrictions would not achieve the goal? What they are essentially asking is, if you find the value of x such that if the value of x falls within a specific interval, then within that interval f cannot have an f inverse. Okay, what they're asking is fx cannot have an inverse function. Okay, the only circumstance under which that happens is if whatever the value of x, okay, that you get for the parabola, if it is within a specific interval, if it is part of an interval, under which condition fx cannot have an inverse function. So f of x equals x squared plus 9x minus b, right? Minus 17. So x equals minus b over 2a. We know a equals 1, b equals 9, c equals negative 17. Not that c matters here, so negative 9 over 2, right? Negative 9 over 2 is negative 4.5. Under which intervals does not negative 4.5 exist? It's not between this, it is between this, not between this, not between this, not between this. So if the interval for x value is x contains elements negative 9 through negative 3, then negative 4.5 is part of this interval, under which condition f of x cannot have an inverse function. All right, that will be the end of this video. I'll see you in another video with more problems. All right, so if you learned something, consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.